Hello and welcome to my incredibly chaotic first video in the art doll making series. So today we are just going to talk about color, the meanings behind color, very simple things that could be used in any form of art and self-expression. If you haven't picked this up already, I'm not a professional. I highly encourage you to look up people who actually do this as a living, especially if you're interested in selling dolls or mass producing them. This is just a fun art doll experiment I'm doing. So we're going to start with colors. We're going to start talking about different ways you can classify colors, starting with really basic, which most of you probably know, but we're going to go over it anyways. And that is warm colors versus cool colors. See if I can even find where my screen is. Good job, me. So, warm colors and cool colors. So, warm colors include red, orange, and yellow. Cool colors include blue, green, and purple. Pink does not actually fall into either category. If I had to choose a category for pink, I would probably put it as a warm color because it's red based. Purple is considered a cool color. Personally, for both pink and purple, I feel like it really depends on the shade because there can be some very pink purples as well. So I think it depends on the shade. Now, I don't really know exactly how to explain cool colors and warm colors. Hopefully when you look at them, you can just kind of see the difference. They're the ones that you would normally pair together if you're thinking about things that look similar. And it usually has to do with, it's so difficult to explain. How do we explain art forms? The warm colors look warm. It's like things you'd see in a fire. They look more bright and cheerful, whereas cool colors tend to evoke a sense of calm. So yeah. Now, another way that you can think about classifying colors is, where is my pen? Ah, here it is. Very professional. Dark and light. Don't know how scientific this one is. Now we're getting off into my territory of things I've made up. Oh, my handwriting's beautiful. But dark and light is another category in my mind because when you think about blue, any color, but I'm going to use blue as my example for now. These two blues look very different. That blue is dark, that blue is light. That can also be seen with green, especially more yellow-based green. That's a very light green. That's a much darker green. Like I mentioned earlier with purple. This is a dark purple, and I believe, unless the color pencils are lying to me, no, I'm right, that's a lighter purple. So you can see again, those are both cool colors, and you could mix them together, absolutely. But you can also kind of see the difference between them. So it's just sort of the idea of shade. I don't really have a great example. Oh, I might actually. We'll look at this really quick. I guess it's more brown. But hopefully you can envision what I'm going to say here. There are some forms of red that are really dark. And that can also be true with orange. I'm sure there's some yellows that are darker as well. So you can just kind of think about dark versus light. Now, oftentimes darker colors tend to mean more like intense, depending on how dark and how black or gray based you make them. They can also invoke more of a feeling of sadness or fear. I'm just gonna go ahead and say this now. This is all interpretive. The way that people view colors and abstract things like this are not concrete. So I'm just stating how they reflect to me and what the internet tells me they reflect. Obviously, for everyone, they reflect different things. And that's the big point about art doll creating, is that you're creating something that's important to you, and you should make it look how you want it to. So you should interpret things however they make sense to you. Even if no one else gets it, you should do it anyways. If a color fits in a different category or means a different thing to you than what people say, do it anyways. Put it where you want it. Because it's your piece of art, and You get to do what you want with it. That's what's fun about it. If someone dislikes it, they can make their own. Everyone can make their own and have fun. Now we are going to talk about... The word escaped me. Okay, it's back. Complementary colors. So, complementary colors are the colors that are across the color wheel from each other. And they are the ones that usually have the most contrast. Now, the first pair you should recognize right away because it is the pair that has been chosen to represent a very favorite holiday of most people. Red and green. Very Christmassy. And this is another one that you might recognize. I didn't know this until someone told me. So if you don't recognize it, we're in the same boat. That is orange and blue. I believe it stands for a sports team. I think Broncos, but I could also be wrong. And then my personal favorite, I love this color combination so much. Yellow, wow, this is a light yellow, and purple. So those are examples of complementary colors. You can see how it's a cool color and a warm color, and they really contrast each other. Now, obviously, you can mix any color combinations that you want. These are just some examples. Now, another thing to think about, now that we've classified colors into different categories, is color palettes that evoke things or ideas. And this is pretty straightforward. You can probably already see this in your mind. But if you were, given an example, doing an art doll that was focusing on fire, there's a very good chance that you would want to choose a color palette that was these warm colors. You'd probably want reds, oranges, and yellows. Whereas if you were doing a doll that represented snow, you might choose like blues, white. You could actually, sometimes a little bit of light yellow works well with snow as well. But, whatever colors you wanted. If you were doing a doll, I did a doll that was frog themed, so I used a lot of green. If you were doing a doll maybe that even was themed after, I'm just going to say, an apple, you might do like green and red. You can use colors that evoke a very specific thing or image in your mind. Like if you were doing something ocean themed, you might use a lot of blue and green. If you were thinking flowers, probably a lot of cool bright colors and then green. And you can layer them. For me, if I was doing a fire doll, I might do it the way I see flames, which would be red in the middle, then orange, then yellow on the outside. And if I was doing an ocean one, I'd probably try to mix my blue and green, because that's the way I see those two different things. But you could do it any way that you wanted. Again, it's interpretive. There's no right way to do art, which is why I love it so much. Because sometimes I have trouble doing things the right way, and I like doing something I can't mess up in. This is also part of why I don't do much realistic art. So, if you thought this was a realistic class, I'm sorry, there probably won't be very much of this. I'll try to do a little demonstration of realism. You can take it as far or drop it wherever you want. Just do what makes you happy. Okay. Next thing we're going to talk about is meanings behind colors. This one, again, is extremely subjective. Everyone sees it differently. But this is just the idea of what colors often represent to people. So, for example, a lot of people, red represents love. If you think about it, it's all over Valentine's Day cards. But it can also represent anger, passion, extreme emotions, pain. It can represent all those different things. We're getting into gray territory here. I don't know as much about orange. I don't use it a lot, if I'm being fully honest. To me, at least, orange can also represent a little bit of pain. I often see it as representing energy, creativity, excitement. You can use the colors to represent whatever you think they represent, and you can also look it up online too if you want, and find out different meanings behind colors. You can also go a lot more specific. I'm doing very basic, and I didn't use the internet, which might hinder me. We'll find out. Yellow often expresses things like spring. I think about lightning. I also think about energy, but I think a lot about like happiness and the sun when I see the color yellow. Oh gosh, the whole paper jumped. Okay. Green. So when I see green, honestly, I just think a lot about nature. I think about trees. I think about grass. For me personally, I think a lot about frogs because my dad loves frogs, so I've drawn a lot of green frogs throughout my life. green to me is just a very, like, fresh, calm color, you know? It's not really energetic, it's just kind of, it breathes, you know? And there's blue. There are so many shades of blue that, at least for me, they all kind of represent different things. But blue is a very tranquil color for me, personally. I tend to think about calm. I think a lot about the ocean when I see blue. I'm in Alaska, so I also think a lot about blueberries, because I've done a lot of blueberry picking and seen a lot of pictures of blueberries throughout my life. But I just think of, like, calm, I think of breathing, I think of peace when I see blue. Okay, purple. So, purple and pink aren't really ones that have, I feel like they're so subjective, again, because there's so many different shades. Purple to me is kind of a calm color. I often think about the history behind purple, which is that it was a color that was very expensive to make, so only royalty wore purple. So to me, it kind of represents, like, richness, wealth. It's like a very rich color in my mind. And then pink. Pink also, for me, represents love, romance, but it doesn't come with, like, the same passion that red does. You know, when I think of red romance, I think of, like, really intense, potentially painful. When I think of pink, I think of a little bit more like cherubs and fluffy and, you know, puppy love and, like, just floating along, you know? And pink, obviously, for a lot of people, think about princesses as well, you know? So that's kind of my idea of what some different colors represent. And now, just realized something when I was writing this down. This is, again, subjective, but I also like to think about colors with seasons, which I've touched on a little bit already, but I'm going to touch on again, partly because making dolls inspired by seasons is really cool. So for me, at least, this is just the way I would line them up. Again, everyone can choose their own way. But for me, at least, green and yellow are summer. That's what I think of when I think of summer, because it's sun and grass. And in my mind, I tend to think of purple and pink for spring, because I think of flowers and tulips. And then I think of blue and white for winter, because it reminds me of snow. And then I think of red and orange for fall, because of falling leaves. We have very few of those here, but I think of them anyways. Also fire. There's a lot of fire in fall. That's when we start the wood stove. So that's kind of my idea for different spring palettes. I think the big takeaway for color is just have fun with it. There's so many colors. And yeah, this is another thing. There's, you can decide how bright you want your colors and how pure you want them. Because you can use just, like, the straight up color, which is what I'm using here, partly because I'm using color pencils. But you can also mix them. You can mix them together, you can mix black into them, you can mix white into them, you can dilute them. We could do a whole thing about pastels, you know? Pastels are very cute, very sweet. You know, you could make them darker, lighter, just, you know, mess around, have fun with them. Do it however you want it to look. I hope this is at least somewhat helpful to you. At any rate, I hope you have fun watching it. I hope it makes you think more about colors and you create something cool with colors at some point. So, hopefully I'll see you later for my next chaotic session, which I need to decide the theme for.